Washington, D.C. is amazing for more than just being the capital of the United States of America. There are some really amazing places to visit that are nothing like what you have in your hometown. I've even seen two of them before. And after researching the city a little more, I want to see all the amazing sights the city has to offer. But for this list, I had to pick just 10. Before I rank those 10, I want to give a warm welcome to anyone who's new to my channel. Here at From Laura's Perspective, I post a new video essay at least once a week on a different facet of the society and culture in which we live. If you want access to a YouTube library full of all that, all you have to do is subscribe. But for now, let's just talk about the 10 best things I think America's capital has to offer. Our lowest entry on this list is one of 3 entries that have to do with the subject of religion. As a Christian, I try to know as much about my faith as possible. A huge part of that is reading and knowing about the sacred text of the Bible. A good way to take one step further would be to visit the Museum of the Bible. This museum doesn't just center around the Bible itself, but also its historical, social, and cultural impact. Each of the 6 floors in the museum contain a different exhibit which emphasizes different aspects of the Bible's history or impact. This includes 3 permanent exhibit floors, each measuring 55,000 square feet or 5,100 square meters. The first floor combines ancient artifacts with modern technology meant to immerse the participant in the Bible. The museum contains more than 40,000 objects and artifacts, ranging from the time of Abraham through the New Testament period. Artifacts include biblical papyri, Torah scrolls, rare printed Bibles, Jewish artifacts, and contemporary treasures of Christian and Jewish culture. The museum also exhibits significant archaeological artifacts owned by collaborating institutions and private collectors such as the Israel Antiquities Authority. The best part is, you don't even have to be religious to get something out of this museum. The purpose of the Museum of the Bible is not to force Christianity onto visitors, but rather to explore how the Bible and various interpretations of it have impacted all kinds of communities, Christian and non-Christian alike. Number 9 is the National Gallery of Art. Art museums all across America celebrate the contributions of painters, sketchers, sculptors, and ceramicists both here and abroad, but none of them live up to the glory of the National Gallery of Art. This massive art museum, located on the National Mall between 3rd and 9th Streets at Constitution Avenue Northwest, has an outdoor sculpture garden attached to it. The gallery's collection of paintings, drawings, prints, photographs, sculptures, medals, and decorative arts traces the development of Western art from the Middle Ages to the present, including the only painting by Leonardo da Vinci in the Americas and the largest mobile created by Alexander Calder. The gallery itself has an east building and a west building linked by an underground passage. The west building, composed of pink Tennessee marble, was designed in 1937 by architect John Russell Pope in a neoclassical style, just like the Jefferson Memorial Pope designed, which is also in D.C. Designed in the form of an elongated letter H, the building is centered on a domed rotunda modeled on the interior of the Pantheon in Rome. Paintings and sculptures in the West Building include classic works from the medieval period and early 20th century, such as those by Jan Vermeer, Claude Monet, Vincent van Gogh, and Leonardo da Vinci. The East Building, on the other hand, contains more modern and contemporary works of art, such as those by Picasso, Matisse, Jackson Pollock, Andy Warhol, and Alexander Calder. Said East Building is geometrical, dividing the trapezoidal shape of the side into 2 triangles. One contains public galleries, and the other houses a library, offices, and a study center. Number 8 is the second religious place I promised earlier, the Washington National Cathedral. When you hear cathedral, you probably think of a Catholic cathedral. I actually made that mistake myself when I first heard about the Washington National Cathedral, which isn't surprising after 7 years of Catholic education. But the Washington National Cathedral is actually a church of the Episcopal denomination. I bet that blew your mind if you didn't already know that. Known officially as the Cathedral Church of St. Peter and St. Paul, this is the second largest church building in the United States and the third tallest building in Washington, D.C. Well, on my week-long dream visit to D.C., I would hope to be able to attend an actual worship service in the National Cathedral. Little do many people know that when this cathedral was first built, it was intended to play a similar role to Great Britain's Westminster Abbey. Despite belonging specifically to the Episcopal denomination, those who built it hoped it would be, and yes, this is a direct quote, a house of prayer for all people. The cathedral has hosted many major events, both religious and secular, most notably memorial and funeral services for U.S. presidents, including, but not limited to, Dwight Eisenhower, Gerald Ford, Warren Harding, and William Howard Taft. Just like with any building of worship, I'm most inclined to visit the National Cathedral by what I hear about the beauty of its architecture. I'm not going to go into detail since I don't have too much time, but a little preview detail of what you'll see is that it's closely modeled on the English Gothic art style of the late 14th century. But this has a twist on that style, and it's known as Neo-Gothic, which means New Gothic. Number 7 is the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. The reason people can live freely here in the United States of America is because of the brave men and women who risked their lives defending this country at war. These men and women are too many to count given the many wars we've been to and how many casualties we had in each of said wars. But a large chunk of them are paid tribute to with just one D.C. monument. Located in Constitution Gardens, adjacent to the National Mall and just northeast of the Lincoln Memorial, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial consists of 2 black granite walls into which are engraved the names of those service members who died or remain missing as a result of their service in Vietnam and Southeast Asia during the war. The sheer amount of name takes 2 acres, or 8,100 square meters, to list. If seeing that doesn't put into perspective the sacrifice of the Vietnam soldiers, I don't know what will. Coming in at number 6 is the all-important U.S. Capitol. Surely you were expecting to see this one on the list. It's the second most important building in D.C., with the first being the White House. Admittedly, though, you won't see that one on this list. Not because I don't understand its significance, but because I want to see all these other places more. To anyone who doesn't know the difference, the White House is where the president operates, and the Capitol is the workplace of our congressmen and women. While the president is the ultimate power when it comes to American politics, it's our Congress who, in my opinion, does the really important work. When you get to D.C., you'll know you're seeing the Capitol building when you see the dome sticking through the sky. By the way, did you know that said dome was first added to the building in 1866, immediately following the American Civil War? This is an especially interesting place to visit if you're politically active, as anyone who cares about their friends and neighbors in their community should be. If you manage to get an official tour from someone who works at the Capitol, that's an even better way to learn how every legislation in American history starts at the Capitol and makes its way out into society. If you're lucky, you may even get to meet one of the very important busybodies in our Congress. In fact, there's actually been a visitor center located below the east front of the Capitol and its plaza between the Capitol building and First Street East. The complex contains 580,000 square feet of space below ground on 3 floors and offers visitors a food court, restrooms, and educational exhibits, including an 11-foot scale model of the Capitol Dome. It also features skylights affording views of the actual dome. Halfway through our countdown, we've got the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. If you've seen my videos before, or just know anything about me, you know that theater and music are some of my favorite things in the world, so you shouldn't really be surprised to see this one make it onto this list. Ideally, I might be able to see a show while on my week-long dream trip to DC. But the good news is that even if I don't, the place will still be worth checking out. It's quite fitting that this building should be built and named for America's Camelot president, even if Lincoln was the one who was shot in a theater. Even if the price of the tickets for a dance, theater, or music performance at this building is out of your reach, the free Art and Ideals President John F. Kennedy immersive exhibit is still available and worth checking out. In this exhibit, you'll learn about the relationship between Kennedy's presidency and the performing arts. And it'll leave you thinking, no wonder this building was made for JFK. The facility also includes the Reach, an indoor-outdoor complex comprising an art gallery, sculpture garden, classrooms and studios, lecture halls, a video wall, and more interactive spaces. Number 4 is the Library of Congress. Hence its name, this library serves as a research center for the U.S. Congress, but it could also be called a national library, just like we have a National Art Gallery, National Zoo, and National American History Museums. Though the Library of Congress hasn't officially been given the name National Library. One of the biggest deals about the Library of Congress is that it's our country's oldest federal cultural institution. The library's functions are overseen by the Librarian of Congress, and its buildings are maintained by the architect of the Capitol. The Library of Congress is one of the 2 largest libraries in the world, along with the British Library. Its collections contain approximately 173 million items, and it has more than 3,000 employees. If you watched any of my book reviews or videos on literature, you know that books are kind of my thing. You can tell from the scope of my channel that media in general is kind of my thing. So of course I want to visit this huge library at some point. Number 3 is the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. The Smithsonian Institution is home to 21 museums all throughout DC, and the Museum of Natural History is one of the 4 that appear on this list. The institution also owns the National Zoo, which you'll also see before this video is over. The Smithsonian Museum of Natural History is the world's 2nd most visited natural history museum, with the first being the Natural History Museum in London. Like most Smithsonian museums, the Smithsonian Natural History Museum contains plants, animals, fossils, meteorites, human remains, and ancient artifacts far beyond what you'll find at your local natural history museum. This museum contains a hall of geology, gems, and minerals, a hall of human origins, a deep time exhibit and fossil hall, a hall of mammals, an insect zoo, an ocean hall, and more. Of course, this one's a little more on the side of science in the natural world, whereas I'm a little more partial towards museums that focus on human culture and the humanities. But it's still worth a visit to learn about the nature of the world around us. Our runner-up is a tough but important one, the United States National Holocaust Memorial Museum. Now on to one of the 2 places I got the chance to visit my 1/20/22 weekend in DC. This one's a dark and heavy one, but a very worthwhile visit. Because it was such an atrocious and tragic event, the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum takes a holistic approach, dedicating itself not just to artifacts, documents, and testimonies about the Holocaust, but to helping leaders and citizens of the world confront hatred, prevent genocide, promote human dignity, and strengthen democracy. The artifacts, photographs, and archival documents all shed light on a different one of the many facets of the complex Nazi regime. This includes what led up to it, what it looked like, and its aftermath to this day. One of the greatest things you'll ever get to see at the USHMM is the archival footage and oral testimonies from people who actually lived through this dark time in world history. One of the toughest aspects of the National Holocaust Museum is the exhibits on how the United States reacted to the atrocity happening on the other side of the Atlantic. Hint: our government could have done a lot more to help these poor people. After seeing and hearing all these bleak and existential things, you'll probably want a quiet space to reflect on everything. A good place to do that is in the Remembrance Hall, the museum's official memorial to Holocaust victims and survivors. This hexagonal hall also names the institutions where Jews and other undesirables, so to speak, of the Nazi regime were killed and mistreated, and contains what are known as eternal flames. With hundreds of things to see and do in DC, it was really hard to pick just 10. Before I reveal the big winner, my favorite place in all of that city, first I want to acknowledge 4 places that almost made the cut. I'd really like to see all the animals at the National Zoo, which has come up a few times throughout this video. I want to go to the Smithsonian Museum of African American History. Really like to see the Lincoln Memorial. And I want to visit the National Air and Space Museum. And that brings me to our video's winner, the Smithsonian Museum of American History. If you saw my countdown on my favorite Smithsonian American History Museum exhibits, then you should have seen this one coming. It's probably not surprising given the respective natures of the two museums, but between this one and the Holocaust Museum, this was my favorite of the two I saw on my weekend in DC last summer. Like most Smithsonian museums, this museum breaks down the layers of something that seems impossibly complex: our nation's history. The Smithsonian Museum of American History contains exhibits on every facet of our country's history, from politics to war to business, transportation, health and medicine, food, poverty, slavery, racism, sexism, currency, technology, cultural diversity, entertainment, and so much more. When it comes to the difficult topics, particularly slavery and oppression of marginalized people, Smithsonian exhibits tackle them head on and cover the full picture. They don't try to sugarcoat it or deny that it ever happened. I could go on, but I already have a whole video about that, which I've linked in the description and on your end screen. Thank you all so much for watching. What I really want to do is traipse every single thing DC has to offer, but I'll likely only have time to see 10, and if that's the case, the places I discussed in this video are the ones I'll go with. Have you ever been to DC? If so, what places did you see? Which were your favorites? Let me know in the comments down below. If this was your first time at my channel, I hope I made a good impression on you. To see more of what I have to offer, check out some of the links on your screen, or check out my channel page to find a playlist or topic that'll appeal to you. One is sure to, since I have so many. All you have to do from there is click subscribe, then turn the bell black so you always know when there's an addition to my video essay library. If people keep doing that, one day it'll be as big as the Library of Congress.